Concord is finally dead. Sony announced yesterday that they're pulling the plug on the most financially draining video game in modern history with a post on their website that spans 11 paragraphs, but basically boils down to, Jesus Christ, this game bombed so hard we had to shut down not only one, but 2 studios to stop the bleed. Now, there were rumors swirling after the game shut down that the game was going to be re-released in a free-to-play state, with users following the SteamDB build updates that were consistently going out in these past 2 weeks. It was clear that somebody was working on the project. Now, the post on the website was written by Herman Hulse, CEO, Studio Business Group of Sony Interactive Entertainment, who's most notably known as one of the co-founders of Guerrilla Games. You know, that company that made Killzone once upon a time, and now, according to him, are struggling to enter into the PvP first-person shooter genre, which is insane. The full quote here: the PvP first-person shooter genre is a competitive space that's continuously evolving, and unfortunately, we did not hit our targets with this title. We will take lessons learned from Concord and continue to advance our live service capabilities to deliver future growth in this area. Is the PvP first-person shooter genre that competitive? Or does every game that you guys release have to hit Call of Duty numbers to deem it a success in your eyes financially? It might have been easier to compete in the space if the game didn't cost a whopping $400 million plus to develop and then release, with most of that money most likely funding the creation of these weekly animated renders, these high-quality videos that we're going to release to help build the lore and the world of Concord, because after playing the beta, there is no possible way that game cost $400 million to make. There's no way that game should have cost $10 million to make, let alone 200 plus another 2. As a channel that covers like first-person PvP shooters, one of the most frequently asked questions in my comment section every single time is, when is this coming to consoles, or is this coming to consoles? And a lot of people complaining that the console space is so barren, bone dry of first-person PvP that they're not getting fed, and a lot of people are considering jumping to PC to open up that library. You have Call of Duty, you have Destiny, you have Rainbow Six, you have Apex Legends, and like, you have the big guys, you have Insurgency Sandstorm, but like, realistically, the landscape for PvP first-person shooters on a console is damn near bone dry. And the crazy thing is I grew up in a time where Sony dominated that space, or at least competed against Xbox back in the day. They had the Resistances, they had the Killzones, they had games like Warhawk, SOCOM, and they completely gave up that market space to chase the trends of making single-player third-person action-adventure games. And don't get me wrong, it has paid off. But in doing so, in focusing on The Last of Us, Horizon, God of War, Uncharted, you completely obliterated and left everybody who was a fan of your old IPs in the dirt. Now, when it comes to things like Killzone, it's clear as day that Guerrilla Games was tired of making Killzone titles, so they opted to make something new. Horizon then took off because it came out at a time where people were actively seeking these kind of experiences, and I feel like the pendulum is swinging back in the other direction. I think people are really getting sick and tired of playing Call of Duty and Battlefield and Apex Legends and Rainbow Six. It's been the same fucking games at the top of the food chain for the past, like, what, 6-7 years, and I think people are tired of consistently getting third-person action-adventure titles from Sony. They want the grittiness. I can feel it in the air that the pendulum is swinging back, yet for some reason, Sony then invests another $200 million in a project that was already like fledgling and struggling to get across the finish line, and then they wonder why they're in this position in the first place. It made no sense. I understand that the gaming industry is so fucking huge that there are games being made for everybody. It's the reason why I didn't shit on a game like Dustborn, even though I feel like that was just a terrible fucking piece of shit game. It wasn't built for me. I'm not the target demographic, so I don't really give a shit. But what I'm wondering is, when is Sony going to open their fucking eyes and realize that there is a target demographic on their platform right now that is tied in, that are simply just waiting for the games that they grew up playing? The crazy thing to me is I was having this same conversation back in 2016. And then in 2017, 18, 19, we're going into 2025 with Sony still not realizing the absolute treasure trove that they're sitting on. And even if they don't want to tackle those same IPs, because Guerrilla Games were the ones who made Killzone, if they don't want to touch it, maybe they don't want to give that to another studio, but you know that that's what gamers want. You don't have to deliver us a Killzone sequel. You have to deliver us something that can realistically, feasibly feed the people that want a Killzone experience, a Resistance experience, you know, whatever. Look at Call of Duty and see what they're doing and realize that there are other companies that have attempted to take that market share, games like XDefiant, and look at them objectively and realize where they missed the mark. It's really, like, I'll be honest with you guys, if we had the money that Sony had to throw at these fucking studios, it would be over. There would be games coming out left, right, and center that I know would hit target demographics that are going to support them long term. I think everybody's completely mind blown by the situation because we have, you know, Destiny and Bungie kind of struggling to maintain their relevance. We have The Last of Us Factions that was canceled by Sony. I think one of the most anticipated multiplayer releases from Sony in years, and it gets canceled before we even know anything about it. I think it's clear to me that there is a larger and larger growing demographic of people who want games like we had in the 2000s. And whether that's a military shooter like SOCOM, or whether that's a gritty like future sci-fi game like Killzone, or something more to do with like the Chimera or an alien invasion in a more gritty like apocalyptic feel like a Resistance. But I think the major problem is that there are no studios, like development studios, that want to make these kind of games anymore. And then we get Concord, a game that the developers were clearly incredibly passionate about. But that passion only goes so far when you're racking up a $400 million debt that needs to be repaid with game sales. You have to, like, there has to be a balance here. And what we're finding more and more is that these studios are making these games, spending millions upon millions, tens of millions of dollars, in some cases like Concord, hundreds of millions, to make a game for a small pool demographic that isn't buying the games anyway. If Concord was Sony's big step back into the PvP first-person shooter multiplayer space, good God. Another thing that I failed to mention, I just had to go off on Sony's mentality towards multiplayer first person. Sorry, one more time. It isn't competitive. You guys just suck at competing. There we go. That about wraps it up. Now, one of the other studios that they shut down was another studio called Neon Koi, who apparently was working on a mobile title. It's a mobile action game. It's not going to be moving forward. I don't even know what the game was, but two studios are shutting down. Sony Interactive, you guys really need to reevaluate what your customer base wants. Looking at market trends and what people are saying online about what kind of games they want, what games they're getting excited for in the future, it's really not that hard to see where the market is going. And you just have to be able to play in that space. And if you're not willing to revitalize some of those old IPs that I think would make a killing nowadays, then the only question I have for you is why? And until you can answer that question, there's really no reason for you guys to enter the space anymore. You guys moved in a different direction and the industry moved on, and now you're seeing that you need to jump into this trend again because you lost the exclusive rights to Call of Duty's advertising. Destiny is falling to the wayside, and you guys have to do something to provide for the multiplayer side of things, something that you have neglected for the last decade at this point, and now you're trying to get back into it by doing things that nobody wants. The question to answer is why? And until you can honestly get to an answer as to why Concord failed, as to why it cost $400 million, and as to why you guys thought that that was a logical thing to do, until you can answer those questions, you will never be successful in this space. And as somebody who grew up championing you guys in conversations around the cafeteria tables, that's a goddamn shame. My name is Big Fry. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.